If you are Zimbabwean and living in the UK, chances are you have heard of Mukando. It's a community savings system that has helped people save money, support businesses, buy property, and send money home. But here's the question. What happens when you take an informal savings system and run it through the highly regulated UK financial systems? Because if 10 people are sending hundreds of pounds into one person's personal bank account every month, that money can look very different to a bank than it does to people participating in the Mukando. Today, we are looking at the real risks: banking, anti money laundering checks, tax, account freezing powers, and the importance of having proper records. And importantly, I'm going to separate the facts from the internet rumors. Let's start with what Mukando actually is. In Zimbabwe, Mukando generally refers to an informal community saving arrangement. The exact structure can vary. In one version, members contribute regularly into a common pot, with the money eventually distributed or used within the group. In other versions, the full monthly contribution goes to a different member on rotating basis. Al Jazeera's 2024 investigation into Zimbabwe Informal Savings Club described similar arrangements involving roughly a dozen members, with contributions collected, redistributed within the group. It also highlighted the vulnerabilities created when the arrangements rely heavily on trust and lack of formal documents. And that brings us to the important distinction. Mukando itself is not the same as money laundering or tax fraud. The problem is what happens when the financial activity becomes difficult for a bank, tax authority, or investigator to understand. Now, imagine you are the person responsible for collecting the Mukando money. Every month, 10 or 12 people transfer money into your personal account. Maybe 200, maybe 500, or maybe more. Then, when it's time to pay the person whose turn it is, you send out a much larger amount. From your perspective, it's completely normal, but your bank doesn't have your WhatsApp group open in front of them. They see the transaction activity. UK financial institutions have anti money laundering obligations, and suspicious activity can be reported through the UK's Suspicious Activity Reporting System. The National Crime Agency explains that suspicious activity reports are an important source of intelligence about potential money laundering and other criminal activity. That doesn't mean your bank sees a Mukando transaction and automatically assume you are a criminal. It means unusual or unexplained patterns can lead to questions. And that's where documentation becomes extremely important. Imagine your bank asks, why are 10 different people sending £500 every month? You say it's Mukando. That's a perfectly understandable answer culturally, but the bank may need more information. Who are the members? How much does each person contribute? What are the rules? Why are you receiving the money? Where is it going? This is exactly where informal arrangements can become difficult. Al Jazeera's reporting highlighted that some savings clubs operate through verbal agreements and WhatsApp messages with limited binding documents. The article quoted a lawyer recommending written contracts or trust agreements with clear rights and obligations. Now, let's talk about one of the scariest claims you've heard online. The bank will freeze your account. Well, it's more complicated than that. Banks can restrict or suspend banking services in certain circumstances, including where they have concerns about fraud, financial crime, or compliance. But an account freezing order or AFO is something different. Under the Proceeds of Crime Act framework, certain enforcement officers can apply to a court for an account freezing order where there are reasonable grounds to suspect that the money in an account is recoverable property or is intended to use in an unlawful act. The court decides whether the statutory conditions for the order are met. So no, a bank's computer does not simply decide this looks like Mukando, freeze it for 2 years. That's not how an AFO works. But if an AFO is made, the consequences can be serious. The order prevents withdrawals or payments from the affected account, and the court can set the freezing period for up to 2 years. And remember, this is not saying Mukando participants are criminals. It is saying if authorities have the legally required suspicion about particular funds, these powers exist. Now, let's talk about the tax side. This is another area where social media can get things seriously wrong. You may hear claims that the HMRC is an AI system that sees Mukando transactions and automatically labels you a tax evader. Don't take that claim at face value. The real issue is much simpler. If money moving through your accounts represents income or other taxable activity, you need to understand your tax position. And if large amounts of money are moving through your accounts, you need to be able to explain what that money actually represents. 10 people sending you £500 doesn't automatically mean you've earned £5,000. If you are simply collecting contributions on behalf of the group, that is very different from receiving £5,000 as your own income. But you need records that demonstrate the difference. You may also hear people mentioning something called COP9. COP9 is HMRC's Code of Practice 9, procedure for civil investigations where HMRC suspects tax fraud. But again, this is not something that automatically happens because you participate in a Mukando. HMRC says COP9 is used in selected cases where it suspects tax fraud, and its guidance specifically says that HMRC keeps an open mind about the possibility of an innocent explanation. The lesson is keep proper records, understand what money is yours, what money belongs to the group, and what, if anything, has tax consequences. And then there are unexplained wealth orders, UWOs. But again, this isn't a normal tax investigation, and it isn't something that automatically applies to people in savings clubs. UWOs are a specific legal power and used in circumstances where there are reasonable grounds to suspect that someone's non-income would not be enough to obtain particular property, or that the property was obtained through unlawful conduct. So if someone tells you HMRC sees your Mukando payments and automatically reverses the burden of proof and takes your money, stop. Ask which law, which process, which circumstances. Now, let's look at another issue. What happens if something wrong happens inside an informal savings club? If you hold eligible deposits with a UK authorized bank, building society, or credit union, the FSCS deposit protection limit is currently £120,000 per eligible person per authorized firm. The limit increased from £85,000 to £120,000 on 1 December 2025. But money sitting in an informal arrangement doesn't automatically come with the same protections as money held as an eligible deposit with a regulated institution. And if disagreements arises between members of an informal club, you can simply assume that the Financial Ombudsman Service will resolve it. The Ombudsman deals with complaints involving financial businesses and operates within a defined jurisdiction. Here's probably the most important part of this entire video. No, you should not conclude that Mukando is automatically illegal in the UK. A community savings arrangements and money laundering are not the same thing. Receiving money from friends does not automatically make that money taxable income. And a bank asking questions does not mean you've committed a crime. The risks come from situations where money flows through accounts in ways that are difficult to explain, poorly documented, inconsistent with the account holder's normal activity, or potentially connected to unlawful conduct. If you are seriously considering to join a Mukando club, here is how to do it more safely. Keep records, member names, contributions, dates, payment references, payouts, and group roles. If possible, don't casually mix your personal money with group money. Use an appropriate formal arrangement where possible and obtain professional advice about the right structure. If you are responsible for a substantial amount of other people's money, consider speaking to your bank, a qualified accountant, a solicitor, a regulated financial advisor. The safest approach isn't to hide the transactions, it's the opposite. Make them understandable. If your bank asks what the money is, you should be able to explain it. If HMRC asks about your tax affairs, you should have records. And if there is ever to be a dispute between members, you want written evidence of what everyone agreed to. There are also safer alternatives. If you want to save together, save a fixed amount every month through a bank or building society. If you are operating a genuine group savings arrangement, consider obtaining professional advice on an appropriate account, legal structure, and documentation. None of these options necessarily has the exact same community feel as Mukando, but the key advantage is clarity. So, should Zimbabweans in the UK stop doing Mukando? I wouldn't frame it that simply. I would say, understand the environment you are operating in. What works informally within a trusted community can become much more complicated when thousands of pounds are moving through personal UK bank accounts. Don't assume the bank understands the cultural context. Don't assume every incoming payment is automatically taxable. Don't assume every unusual transaction means you are in trouble. And don't assume you are protected if something goes wrong. Keep records, keep the money trail clear, and get professional advice when the amounts or arrangements become significant. What's your experience? Have you ever had a UK bank ask you about money coming into your account? Or have you ever been part of a Mukando or savings circle in the UK? Tell me your experience in the comments. And if you have found this useful, like the video, subscribe to Introverted Chronicles, and share this with someone in the Zimbabwean diaspora who needs to hear this.